The joy of modern gaming. A blessing and a curse. It seems 5 minutes after a game releases, whether we want them or not, patches come thick and fast. And even though Resident Evil 4 Remake did have a few issues on consoles and PC alike, it wasn't in dire need for patches in my opinion, but alongside a DLC-free Mercenaries gameplay mode, that's exactly what we've got. But is it all for the better? So, the version I'm covering here is the PlayStation 5 and the Series X because they're the biggest of the bunch, and there really was a couple of issues that needed patching from the original release. One of them was the PS5's image quality was a little unstable. It was certainly softer, and as I covered on both my review and over on IGN, it was desperately in need of sharpening, and it was using a lower resolution solution on post effects and alpha, and possibly even less AA. Certainly the Xbox Series X had a better image quality, even if resolution counts came in identical across both consoles, and actually slightly lower in the FPS mode. 1944p on the PS5 versus 1836 on the Series X. Very close, but a slight reduction nonetheless. Nothing seems to have changed here in the resolution side on the patches. Both versions seem to run exactly the same as they did before. But what we now have is two updates. One, in terms of the update from Capcom themselves, telling us that they've improved a rendering solution that causes textures to look not quite as sharp, i.e. they've added the sharpening pass as I mentioned in my IGN review. As you can see, comparing the old version pre-patch to now, you can see that sharpening has now been applied, which was missing on the PlayStation 5 before. They've actually also probably done a little work on the alpha effects as well, because it doesn't look quite as jittery and fizzly as it would have done in the post-sharpening that I added on that video. So overall, that's a nice improvement, and it does improve the image quality on the PlayStation 5, but nothing else changes. The resolution and the alpha effects are still rendered at a lower resolution, including things like ambient occlusion, so they can cause some shimmering and popping at certain points in the title. And what's happened, Cal Surprise, is the Series X has now joined the PlayStation 5 with its reduced AA and or alpha post effects on top of that, giving you almost an identical image now between the PlayStation 5 and the Series X. And this basically mitigates one of the issues on the Series X as well. One of them was the fact that it had a better image quality, so no doubt about it, in the resolution mode it's now worse than it used to be. Not significantly, but it certainly has more shimmer, more pop, more fizzle than it had before the patch. But the reason they've done this is the resolution mode, with all ray tracing and hair strands on, rarely got anywhere close to 60 FPS. And now, I cover VRR on this channel, and I cover it in depth, but let's be clear, it's a very small portion of the market that has VRR screens. So fundamentally, there's many people that may want to play the resolution mode, and currently, it was closer to 30 FPS than 60 FPS without a VRR screen. So they've reduced the post effects and probably the AA as well. As you can see here, the ambient occlusion is lower resolution. It shimmers and moves around within the roof racks itself. You can see the specular and leaves on the water are now far more unstable. They shimmer and fizzle far more often, and any movement creates that grid-like look because all of these effects are a lower resolution. Now, there's two reasons why the image quality is worse. The one is they've reduced the post effects in AA, and the other is the fact they've increased the sharpness slightly. I wouldn't say much, maybe around 5, maybe 10%, but overall you can see here it increases the sharpness of textures and objects in the game, but it also means that that fizzle and shimmering is now a little higher than it was before. So you get a slightly sharper image overall in terms of clarity, but a more unstable one. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen this, and in fact, Resident Evil 3 Remake was, if you remember when I covered it back when it launched, they actually patched that, and even the demo mode got patched. It originally was a 4K title region reconstruction on the Xbox One X, and that was later patched to 1620p. Again, for the same reasons. The performance was just too big of a delta between it and the PS4 Pro, even though it had better image quality. So again, it might be a choice for the development team trying to get the best out of the hardware, but I think realistically, frame rate is more important than image quality when the differences are this small. Zoomed in, as you see here, yes, clearly there are some visual differences, but overall it's not a big sacrifice. The other one is the fact that they've also improved the dead zone on the sticks, and this was very, very bad on the Xbox Series X and Series S. As you can see with the camera at 240 frames per second here, it takes ages, probably around 50% of the movement on the dead zones to actually get it to go into a movement on the stick when you're aiming and moving around. And that makes aiming and just precision really bad, and it's exacerbated by the acceleration on the sticks. You have to ramp it up or slow it down. it's just not consistent, and that feels bad to play. They've actually fixed this now. It's not quite as good as the PS5, but it's much, much closer, as you can see with these comparisons here. So overall, they have improved the two main issues. Performance is better, image quality is worse, but the input and control latency is much better as well. It's no faster than it was before, still a pretty high latency title for a 60 FPS game, 200 plus milliseconds on both consoles here. But again, because of the improved frame rate, that 16 millisecond delta I covered before is probably now mitigated, or at least removed, because the frame times are much closer together more consistently throughout this resolution mode of play. So what they've done is tried to claw back that performance deficit that it had to the PlayStation 5, and I covered in my reviews, which could be somewhere around 20% at certain points. Certainly on average, it could be around 15 to 18%. And now we see a significant improvement on the Series X in the maxed out resolution, plus ray tracing and hair strands turned on. We now get much better performance. Not quite as good as a PlayStation 5, but we're now talking 2 or 3 FPS difference in these comparisons here, rather than 10 to 12 at certain points. Overall, from an average run of identical play here, combating one of the heaviest sections in the title using the demo version, which was quite a stress test in fact. But overall, this is the best you're going to see in terms of performance. It's not quite locked 60 FPS on both, and in fact, it's basically not changed on the PS5. As I say, all they've really done is added that sharpening pass on both FPS mode and resolution mode, and everything else appears to be identical on the PlayStation 5. But the reduction in the alpha and potentially the AA pass on the Series X does give back quite a bit of GPU performance, and now what we see is it's very close in most sections here compared to the previous version, where it could be on average around 10 FPS in heavy sections of play, and this is quite a big deficit between the two consoles. So that means they've certainly improved the resolution mode, and if you turn off ray tracing and hair, then expect these to get closer to that 60 FPS target, but not quite locked. The PS5 can't manage it, so the Series X won't manage it either. So testing the FPS mode, what we can see is it hasn't significantly changed. And in fact, it probably hasn't changed much, other than they've increased the sharpening pass on the Series X version, it seems, over the previous release as well. So now you get a slightly sharper image, and certainly it looks like a subtle reduction in the alpha effects as well, giving a little bit more shimmer and fizzle, but overall it's not that big of a deficit compared to what it was before. And that means when you turn off ray tracing and hair strands, it's pretty much a locked 60 FPS on both consoles. Again, if you have VRR, then you can turn this mode on with ray tracing and hair strands, and pretty much you'll play close enough to that VRR range to never have any issues in terms of performance. Without it though, this is still the mode that I would choose to give you the most solid performance overall. The resolution mode certainly has seen significant improvements, and again, a lot of this will be down to the Mercenaries mode, which when you start playing it, you can really swamp the screen. So overall, the improvements they've made here actually won't benefit the game as much as it will benefit the Mercenaries mode, where you can swamp the screen with lots of characters, explosions, and a lot more pyrotechnics than you get in the single player story. And like Leon, I'm shutting the doors and shutting shop. That was a quick one, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And remember, I am self-funded and completely independent, which you can help by sharing, liking, commenting, all that good stuff down below. Anyway, I'm out, but I'll catch you very soon on the next one.